Kia ora everybody, or as the case may be now, g'day. We're finally up and running again with the Stag podcast. It's been quite a nice hiatus. Been getting settled here in Australia. We're still a bit of furniture short. I'm recording this on the couch that we're borrowing from my work. We have one chair. We have a few things for Billy to play with. A vacuum cleaner and a clothes horse, washing machine, and our mattress is still on the floor, so getting there. Our stuff is on its way from New Zealand, and we have a car, so we're slowly but surely getting settled in and loving the environment. It's so good to live opposite the beach, even if the beach does have the odd shark circling around every now and again. And if you've been following Stag Vision on Instagram, you would have seen the photo I put up the other day. Last week, for some unknown reason, work decided to book a locum for the last fortnight at the place I work in, inland. And so that meant that I got 2 paid days off, which was absolutely remarkable. Was able to go and enjoy the beach with Billy and Alex and relax and regroup and refocus, and sure enough we managed to sneak in a podcast there on today, which is Sunday, ironically International Digital Detox Day. Of not being able to achieve that, but that's all good. We had plenty of detoxing on Thursday and Friday. I'm back into rugby, much to Alex's disappointment, but I find that in a life where I'm at home with 2 beautiful girls in my job as an optometrist, it's quite it's still customer service orientated, so you very much need to be very understanding, and listening is a key part of the job. And I find that being out on the rugby field is one of those things that gets you to be into that hyper-masculine environment. Obviously you get to tackle people and so it really balances me out, and I think overall makes me a better person. The constant problem solving, the challenge, the physical exertion, all put me to the limits, test me out, and it means that come day to day I can be a much more level-headed person. And it's a great outlet for me. And so despite the fact that it means being away a little bit, which is very, very hard, and I definitely understand Alex's apprehensions with that, and I do feel bad for that, because it's not fair, but at the same time I think it's necessary for me to be the best person I can be going forward. Anyway, this is enough about a little bit of journey. I'm sure you've been following it along on Instagram. It's time to get into the podcast. It's why you're all here, what you want to listen to. We're bringing you Lucas and Martina from Grilo Protein. We got in touch with Grilo through Kai Whanu, who we interviewed a few episodes ago. And they are bringing cricket protein to the world. I touch on in the podcast why this sort of interested me and why it resonated with me. Now, I'm a massive advocate for pasture-raised animals, obviously for hunting, but in terms of a large-scale protein, and you hear about it from Joe Rogan talking about how vegans should eat insects. In terms of large-scale protein, like Martina talks about B12, those oils, it's something that might just fill a gap. Hey, it might not be the optimal nutrition, but it is something that we've done in a previous ancestral life. And in a case of survival, I know I'd be tapping into those bugs and crickets and cicadas and all those sorts of things for a good protein source to try and sustain. But enough rambling. Let's hear it from Martina and Lucas, and I hope you enjoy this. It's great to be back, and we hope to keep it consistent from now on. Cheers, enjoy.
Would you like a glass of water? I'll get a glass for you.
Yeah, I'll be good. Yeah. Hello, everybody. We're sitting down at Shelter in Lennox Head with Martina and Lucas from Grilo Protein. How are we today? What have you been doing this weekend? We'll start with you, Martina.
I did a bit of work, had some fun with friends, had coffee, went to the markets. Yeah.
Nice. Which market was that?
Farmers market in Bangalore.
Yes, we went there last week. What was your favourite thing to pick up?
Oh, strawberries.
Very nice. And you, Lucas?
I've been doing a bit of work this weekend. I did a tasting yesterday for Grilo in Cuban, and doing surfing a bit.
Nice.
Surf's small, but the water is beautiful. Yeah.
Whereabouts were you surfing?
Suffolk Park.
Suffolk Park.
Yeah.
Because yesterday in Angels Beach, the helicopter was buzzing and the siren was going off, so everybody was out of the water.
I think the same happened at Suffolk as well, just before I went surfing.
Oh dear.
I heard.
Nice. So we'll start off with, you said the name Grilo. Who is Grilo and what does Grilo mean?
Grilo means crickets in Portuguese.
Nice.
And yeah, we are from Brazil, and that's why we chose Grilo to be our brand's name, because crickets in Portuguese.
Yeah.
But it also means good luck in some countries, and yeah.
And who is Grilo?
I think Grilo is the whole team. Is Grilo, I would say. Like Martina said, it means crickets in Portuguese, and it's a way of representing a bit of our country too, where we're from. And we thought it was gonna be a beautiful name to have the business on.
Nice. And so how many's in the team?
There's 4 of us.
Yeah.
There's Martina and I, also my partner Camila, and Martina's partner Pedro.
Nice. So very family.
Family reasons.
Yes.
And so, who is Lucas?
I'm a chef.
Yeah.
By trade, and I also have a bit of background in international business. I moved to Australia 12 years ago, and I decided this was the place I wanted to be.
Yeah.
And I went back to Brazil just for a few visits. I became an Australian citizen now, and
Nice.
I just want to be here for as long as I can. It's a beautiful spot.
Lovely. And Martina, who are you? How did you end up in Australia as well?
I came to Australia 4 years ago. My plan was just staying for a year, but then I ended up staying. So, yeah, I have a business degree.
Yeah.
I studied in Brazil, and then I finished my studies, and I was a bit lost there. I didn't know what to do. I was a bit upset with my job, not having much fun. And yeah, then I decided to come to Australia just for a year to see if I have any ideas of what to do, what I wanted to be and do for a career. And then I ended up staying, and we started Grilo. Yeah, and I'm also a barista.
Yeah.
And sometimes I do a few shifts, still make some coffee, which I love. Yeah, it's a good balance between computer work for Grilo and to talk to people in a cafe, or it's a good balance.
So what was the business that you went into following university, and what was getting you down about that business?
Was that? Sorry.
What was the business you went into following university, and what was sort of getting you down about that business?
I used to work in a media company in Brazil, a TV, newspaper, and radio company. I used to work I used to do marketing for the company's directors. So it was more, promoting events, meetings, and doing a lot of CRM, so customer relationship management for them. Yeah, it was a bit stressful, but I learned a lot, and I've been using some skills that I learned in Grilo now. So
Nice.
Yeah.
And so, coming to Australia, what did you find? Was it a gradual process, or was it an aha moment?
It was an aha moment. I started working in a cafe as a waitress, and I just wanted to do something very different that I was doing in Brazil, sitting all day long in an office from 9 in the morning till 7 p.m. So I just wanted to do something very different from my reality in Brazil. So I started doing some shifts as a waitress in a cafe in Byron, and then ended up being a barista, and then we started Grilo. Yeah.
Nice. And Lucas, before we got started, you said you went to New Zealand and you worked as a on the press for the wall.
The press, that's right.
What took you to New Zealand, mate?
I think New Zealand, I wanted to live an experience, a bit of a sabbatic year. I engaged in university, and I thought I wasn't sure if it was what I wanted to study. Then I went to New Zealand, lived there for 2 years, and then my mom and dad said, all right, now it's time to come back, finish your uni. I went back, and I got a job with my father in it was actually the second biggest chicken export company in Brazil. But the corporate world was a bit depressive, to be honest. I was working 7 to 7, only seeing the light through the window, and I was getting fat and not getting sun and not enjoying the beach. So I also wanted a change, just like Martina did. And I wanted to come to Australia. I started to do a chef's course in Brazil just to gain a bit of experience, because I thought cooking would be a way of working everywhere I would travel. And then I came to Australia. There was an opportunity here to migrate into the country as a chef. So I did all my studies here, left the corporate world, and worked in the kitchens between Sydney and Byron for about 12 years. And then I had enough of that, and that's when Grilo started, like when we all decided to do a business together, and we had a few business ideas that we wanted to do. But when Martina found out about crickets in America, we thought, oh, this is different, this is cool, and we went for it.
Before we dive into that, what was the type of culinary that you were working in?
I think to start with was very classic, like Australian breakfast and lunches and cuisine. But then after 4.5 years, I was very fortunate to meet Pedro in a cafe that was a very healthy and organic driven cafe in Avalon in Sydney. It was called the Health Chef back then, and I had the opportunity to work with Teresa, a lady from Sydney who was an icon on health cooking. And then I just learned a lot more about organic and being healthy and eating well, so I decided to drive my career that way, and that's what I've been cooking since then, just healthy, sustainable, organic food that I enjoy actually eating too, not just serving to people.
And how does that sort of feed back to your dad's business of the biggest chicken exporter in Brazil?
Was not actually his business. He was working there as well. He was one of the directors, but he always supported me on everything I wanted to do. He knew that the corporate world was a tough game, and he could see that I was wanting to experience new things and do something different. He was an accountant. He is an accountant, and he knew I didn't want to follow that path. And even though I really enjoy working with international trade, it is what I love still. That was not the right time for me as a 21-year-old. You don't want to be in the office all day. You want to be out and about and traveling and surfing and doing other things.
Nice. So you guys came together, and you said you had a number of ideas. What was sort of on the table? Firstly, what sparked a brainstorm session to come up with a business?
We were always into superfoods, and we are just thinking, we have to find something that is not available in Australia yet, a superfood that's not available here, as we are from South America, and there's so many stuff from Amazon, from Peru, and then we start to do some research, and actually, I was training for a half marathon, so I was running 5 days a week, 10Ks a day, and I was feeling very tired because we are all about sustainability as well. So we started to watch some documentaries about sustainability, and we stopped having that much meat at home and start to have more sustainable meals. So we were kind of on a vegan diet for a while, trying it out. But I was training for the half marathon, and I couldn't keep up training with that diet. I was always feeling very weak and low energy levels and low iron. And I started having some vegan proteins like pea protein and brown rice. I tried many things and it didn't work. And then I decided to do my own research and found out about the crickets, the cricket powder. And I bought a package from America because it wasn't available here in Australia. I bought it from America and started having it every day in my smoothies in the morning. And after a month, I was feeling so much better, like energy levels high, and I could wake up in the morning full of energy and do my stuff. So I convinced everyone at home to start having it as well. So we all started having it in every meal. The boys were trying some recipes, like they used to do veggie patties with the cricket powder in it. And yeah, they started to cook with the cricket powder, and we started having it in our vegan meals.
Yeah.
So our one and only animal protein source was crickets for a while. And we were all feeling very good. So that's how it all started.
Nice. And so what was the response from everybody else when you thought, yeah, eat some ground up crickets? What did you think?
I think at the start, everyone thought we were crazy. I think so. We were the odd ones eating insects, and our friends were supportive because they knew we were very passionate about everything we would do, and they knew we would eventually succeed on that. But everyone was a bit sus on us and trying to understand why these guys stopped eating fish and stopped eating meat and now eating insects. No one does that. But then the more the business evolved, and we started to show our friends and people that were close to us that it's okay to eat insects and it's not going to affect the taste of your meal, and you maximize the nutrition. They started to accept more, and the same started to happen with all the demos and tastings that we did with Grilo at the start. No one would never heard about it, but now it seems like a much more common thing. And we believe in a couple of years' time, or maybe 3 to 4 years, will become a commodity in Australia, and everyone will be eating crickets just like everyone now eats raw fish and hemp, which before was illegal. Now it's everywhere.
Yeah.
So we see the same pattern happen to crickets down the track.
Yeah, it's quite cool coming to Australia and being able to see hemp on the shelf, like Pana Chocolate make that hemp chocolate bar, and in New Zealand it's sold as soap.
Yeah.
But of course it's chocolate. But it's an interesting thing. I know a group of dairy farmers in the middle of the North Island are growing a hemp plot, and they've got to have everything away from the road. They've got to get permits for everything, and even then to try then to sell it, they're having all sorts of problems. So hopefully that can expand shortly in New Zealand. And it's interesting you say about the nutrition of it. Preparing for this podcast, I was kind of thinking of where did I hear about crickets or insects, and it took me back to when I was 14 at a school camp. We did a little bit of a survival session. We're in the bush, and the Department of Conservation guide pretty much said if you in the bush and you've got no food and you buy a river, if you basically put a sock or a t-shirt or something in the river, you'll collect all these insects, and if you eat those are higher in protein than anything else, and you just might survive and it'll sustain you. And so we caught these bugs with a t-shirt in the river and ate them, and then stupidly at a Rhythm and Vines concert again in Gisborne.
Yeah, I've been there twice.
Someone dared me to eat a cicada, and in the state I remembered, oh yeah, it's high protein, it'll be sweet. But you said the energy levels whilst you were vegan were down trying to train. What is it about the cricket's nutrition that do you think got you up again? Is there oils and fats, and obviously the protein content of it is
mainly the protein, I would say, because it's the nutritional profile of crickets and other edible bugs. They're quite similar to beef. Mm-hmm. So crickets, for example, they have 69% protein, which is very high. And I think for me the mainly thing was protein.
Yeah.
And also iron.
Yes, right.
They are high in iron as well. So.
Yeah.
And B12.
Yeah,
They're
and B12.
extremely high in B12.
Yeah.
In 10 grams of crickets, you get more than 150% of the recommended daily intake on vitamin B12. That's a very important vitamin. A lot of people need that, and
especially vegans.
Yeah.
especially on a vegan diet. For us was a struggle. Like
Yeah.
Camila, my partner, she was struggling with the iron and B12 deficiency for quite a while, and we even designed one of the blends that we have, the super greens,
Yeah.
thinking of how we could bump the iron intake for people. And it became like a blend where you can get 53% of the daily intake in iron in only one serve.
Yeah.
So you have a smoothie and you're already halfway through. So
Yeah. And thank you very much. You sent me through some of that super blends. It was very green. Do you guys have seaweed in there? You're speaking about iron and B12 and things like that. Have you tapped into seaweed as well? And kelp?
We haven't tapped into kelp yet.
Yeah.
We actually tried the kelp the other day at Harvest on the Future Foods event. We participated with the Northern Rivers food group, but we do use other greens like chlorella, spirulina, wheatgrass, which is very high in iron, barley grass, and that's the 4 greens that we use at the moment on it.
Beautiful. No, I definitely felt a zing after that one. Cool. So, as a team, what's sort of the ethos of Grilo? You know, it must be easy, you know, being with partners and being able to go back and forward. And what's the ethos of the company to drive it forward? What drives this superfood sustainable revolution?
I think sustainability is the biggest driver for us, and eating well, and respecting nature as well and our environment, you know, and doing something to create a positive impact, which for us is changing our eating habits, and introducing a whole new way of eating in Australia, which is insects. Like not much people that are currently living in Australia eat insects. The real Australians, the Aborigines used to eat a lot of insects before, like the witchery grubs and Christmas beetles, things like that. But that has been lost through evolution. We unfortunately stopped eating bugs when we domesticated cows and chickens. And it was a very sad moment, I believe, for our evolution, right? Because we stopped eating the most sustainable food and one of the most nutrient-dense foods to focus on something that was more profitable. And that only many years later we realized that was causing a very negative impact in our environment, which is the livestock industry.
With the sustainability, how is it farmed? What is the environment that you need to create to produce a large number of crickets?
So they are very easy to farm. They can grow in any space. It's basically, it could be done in a warehouse, or for example the farm where you're getting crickets from, they adapt an old chicken house into it's a 5,000 square meter facility just for the organic crickets, and now they upgrading up to 50,000 square meters for their whole production. They stay on a temperature between 36 degrees Celsius, which in Canada can be a very big difference from inside the farm. Sometimes it's 30 degrees inside, but when you go out it could be minus 30 outside. They use very little water. To produce 1 kilo of crickets you need only 1 liter of water, in comparison to beef where you need 20,000 liters of water for 1 kilo of protein. It's a huge difference. That's why they say that crickets are 12 times more efficient than beef. They can be farmed on a vertical farm too. So there are projects I've seen in America where they're developing cricket farms on the CBDs of big cities, just to show people that it can be done everywhere and not just on the countryside, which could be another solution for the future, since we are running out of land.
Yeah.
And they also have a very short life cycle, which is 6 to 8 weeks, so they reproduce very fast, and they only get harvested at the end of the life cycle to minimize any kind of impact, and to make sure that they have enough time to lay their eggs before their life cycle is finished.
Are they like mini insects where laying the eggs is the end of their life cycle basically?
Yeah, well, they only lay their eggs toward when they mature.
Yeah.
So right at the end of the life cycle, about like 7 to 8 weeks, and then after that they get harvested.
And so what are they feeding on?
The crickets could be fed anything, like from organic vegetable waste to carrots, broccolis, lettuce, anything. For the sake of having a consistent nutritional profile and keep that 69% protein, high in B12, they use an organic meal to feed them.
Yeah.
So they design a meal which is made to reach those nutritional content. There were like cases where they would, and that's where it becomes tricky to feed them only vegetable waste, because, for example, in one time of the year you're gonna be feeding them lots of broccoli and cauliflower and things, but then down the track you won't be able to keep that same nutrition profile because you're gonna be feeding them, I don't know, carrots and lettuce and other things. So they had to design a meal which is 100% organic to feed them and keep up the maximum nutrition.
So this could potentially be an answer to our sort of food waste problem as well, do you think?
I think it could.
Yeah.
It definitely could, as long as, again, it's the animals are fed in a way that keeps the nutrition profile.
Yeah.
But it definitely, I see farms using vegetable waste, and I believe in the future, once crickets are a commodity, we all gonna be able to, if we want, to farm them at home, just like people have sometimes their chicken or one cow, or just how they grow their basil at home.
Yeah.
There are projects in America that want to teach people on how to do that, in order that in the future everyone will know how to have some crickets at home to feed their family.
There is a company on Kickstart doing a cricket farm. It looks like a little container with drawers, and the company's name is Living Farms. So you can check it out. It's a home cricket farm, very little ones.
Beautiful. One of the really interesting things I saw on that document you sent through to me was that they could be a very good use for feeding other animals, and in particular the likes of fish farms. Now, fish is supposed to be this really, nutrient dense, high omega-3 animal, and really nutritious, yet a lot of those, for likes of salmon that we get now, is farmed salmon, and they're being fed corn and oil and soy waste product, and so that apparently is affecting the makeup of the fish, and a lot of the colour that the fish are getting is from adding carrot to it, so that they're nice and orange.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't for what's in the meal, then they wouldn't have that colour. And like I said, if you put in a good stream, if you put a t-shirt in there, you'll grab a whole lot of bugs, which is what the fish, actually eat. And any sort of fly fisherman will tell you that they use a different type of fly depending on the season, depending on what the bugs are, depending on what other animals, sometimes they use a mouse fly as well. And so that was one of the really exciting things, that instead of feeding these fish, corn waste and soy waste and having these high omega-6 fish, that you could use crickets. What other, I guess, food spectrum could the cricket fit into?
I think, I haven't heard yet of fish farms using insects to feed their fish, but I know that in Australia there are many insect farms focusing on livestock feed.
Right.
And just like you said, they don't want to feed them any crap waste food. They trying to feed them insects, which are actually a much more sustainable option than soy, for example, and corn. I think it's okay would be okay if they're using organic corn or organic soy to feed their fish. Then they would get a good nutrition profile from it. But I don't think it's okay to feed them like stuff just to make it more colorful or just for the looks and not actually for the nutrition. Yeah.
So you guys said that you're looking at getting a whole cricket product into Australia, and of course that comes with biosecurity measures. How is as an insect farm, you said there's already insect farms in Australia, how are they addressing a biosecurity aspect?
I think there are cricket farms in Australia. They use one particular species, which is the Acheta domesticus species. It's a different species from the one we buy from Canada. The farm where we're getting the crickets from, they used the same Acheta domesticus species. However, they had an issue at 1 year of their production, that this cricket was a bit more suitable for a disease. And when I say disease, is not something that would be any bad for humans, but they lost their whole production for the year, just like you lose the crop of like corn or something. And then they started to work on a new species that was much stronger than the first one. Unfortunately, in Australia, this species is not allowed in. There are many farms, including one in Canberra. There is a friend of ours that she does black soldier flies for livestock feed. She wanted to bring in this species to Australia, but she haven't got the approval from the Department of Agriculture, which is in a way unfortunate, because there is all these groups of people trying to create a whole new industry, which is the eatable insect industry, and they invest in their money, their life, their time, everything to create a whole new sustainable industry. But they in a massive risk, because if it happens that they lose all their production of crickets once and they lose all their eggs, they got to start from zero again. And to start from zero again would be very hard for them. So I think it would be smart for our government to allow us, or not us, but cricket farmers, to bring in a new species. Of course, it has to be all controlled and done it properly, but I'm sure they have the tools and facilities to do that. But this would secure the industry much more, and all these people that have been investing 5 to 10 years working on something, they would not be at risk of losing everything in one night, which happened to the lady Olympia, our friend from Golterra in Canberra. She had her whole cricket farm wiped. They all died, because she was learning how to feed them and what to feed them and which environment they would be growing best, and she lost everything. So she had to start from a few eggs again, and then reproduce into more crickets, and then again double the size, and then she restarted again. But she mentioned she even went to the Department of Agriculture to try and talk to them, but they were very strict. And yeah, unfortunately, still very hard for cricket farms in Australia to grow and get to a bigger scale and make it more mainstream and use all the opportunities that there are there, like for Australia to export into the Asian market and into every other market like America, Canada, Europe. Everyone's starting to catch on to more sustainable practices, and insects is definitely one of them.
And I guess from their perspective, they're worried about release of a new species into Australia and what they might do to the ecosystem, but even a large-scale population of crickets could devastate the likes of a pasture or like broccoli or anything like that. So how do they protect the Australian environment? And obviously that must be one of the big sink costs of setting up a cricket farm, is making sure it's a secure environment.
Yeah. I think that's one of the biggest concerns from the Department of Agriculture, is not to introduce a new pest into Australia. But I think that this animal that is considered a pest, and it's been looked at as a pest for many years, should be seen as a solution for not just for Australia but for the future generations, for the world. Imagine if we could teach the whole Africa how to farm crickets, and they could sustain themselves by having a few crickets in the garden and not needing much water, which is an issue in Africa. If we change our mindset, the way we look at these animals, it could offer us an opportunity and not offer us a problem like it's seen at the moment.
I immediately thought, 1970s in New Zealand, that had this big cull operation of feral deer, and somebody decided to trap a few, and now there's a booming industry. What are we now, nearly 50 years later on? It could be the same for, a pesky cricket in your garden.
That's it.
could feed your family. So where do people find the product? Are you just Australia, or are you all over?
Yeah, for now we are just selling in Australia.
Yeah.
People can find it online in a few health shops. Mainly online. I think it's the easiest way. When we do 3 cricket powder blends, which one is the plain cricket flour, cricket powder. One is the super greens, which is high in iron and B12, and we also have a protein powder, chocolate protein powder, which is the cricket flour mixed with pea protein and brown rice protein and cacao. So we have those 3 powders, and we also have 2 energy bars. One is banoffee pie and the other one is raw cacao fudge. And we are working on our next flavor.
Yeah.
So we just keep an eye on it.
Yeah. Nice. And where do people sort of find your specialty, the public relations side of things? How do people check out the story and the vibe of Grilo?
I think on social media, I think we use Instagram a lot. Like in our stories, we always post recipes and our daily lives, meals we do with cricket powder. And I think the mainly channel would be Instagram. And our website as well, and people can claim a free sample on our website if they're willing to try crickets for free. They can just head to our website and order one to try.
Awesome. So what would be a question that you'd have for the audience, or an idea that you'd like to leave the audience with? One from each of you would be amazing.
I think one idea that I think is that the food chain is a very powerful tool we have.
Yeah.
We could change everything in the world by changing the food chain, and we control the food chain.
Yeah.
It's not we have to change the mindset that the big corporations and the businesses, they control the food chain, because that's what they want us to think, but we control the food chain. If we get one day and we go as a nation or as a race, the human race, and say we're not gonna eat this crap anymore, you guys have to put good food in our table. We want to eat something that it's not causing impact in the planet. If we say no to a few things that are causing all this destruction in our planet and start eating different things like crickets, hemp, kelp, things that are not causing a negative impact in our environment, we can actually change a lot of things. But it's all on us, We have to make that decision and decide what we want to eat, and not just eat everything that is thrown at us. So I think changing our eating habits, it's the most powerful tool we have, but it's yet not explored on the full extent, And I think that's the message I would like to give to people, like, think more when you're choosing what you're eating, because that can cause a very positive impact, not just on your life, but in many generations in the future, Yeah.
And for you, Martina, that's
I agree.
hard act to follow.
I agree with Lucas, and I also think people don't have to change their habits. Like, they don't have to stop eating meat or being vegan or, whatever. They just can sometimes substitute some types of protein, like maybe twice a week don't eat any meat and try to eat another source of protein like crickets or hemp or I don't know, whatever. But just try to change eating habits a little bit and choose for food that doesn't cost the earth.
Absolutely. Wicked.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Thank you so much, and
Thank
lovely
you.
to meet you both.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ryan.
That's how that worked. Yay!
What an awesome conversation, and it was a great time sitting there in the open air beside the beach. As you heard, plenty of people enjoying themselves there at shelter, and I love what Lucas finished with. It was really not something I expected from him. It was so in depth, and why I guess things like farming so resonate so well with me. We are in control of the food chain, and this year it was so cool to be able to grow broccoli, grow kale, grow spring onions, grow leeks in the garden, harvest those and eat them fresh every day. And it's exactly the same with crickets. We're in control of the food chain. Where do we want our food to come from? Do we want it to come from a factory, or do we want it to be fresh, low impact, and obviously delicious and nutritious? The farming model that I want to seek out involves permaculture, involves restorative agriculture, it involves getting the soil as optimized as it can be, full of worms, full of nutrition, so that the grass, the vegetables, the fruit, the trees, the nuts, things like avocados, the animals that live off them, the chickens, everything works together, and it's this ecosystem rather than this monoculture. And I guess that's where the world of crickets, whilst in the case of Grilo, is about having a end stage product that's a protein source that can supplement a diverse lifestyle without the impact that something like growing a cow in the capacity of having a whole bunch of cows on a feedlot, or the case of pork and of course chicken in these big cages. A cricket can provide a much more efficient source of protein, but also it can be a product that within the food chain in the greater picture can provide more sustainability. Like I mentioned, with fish farming, we can have these nutritious fish that are fed on a beautiful diet. He said it's already being used in the likes of cattle farms and dairy farms to provide a protein source for the animals. It's not just that, and then it can be used for food waste. Something positive can come from waste instead of being buried in a tip or in a dump where it lets off greenhouse gases, instead of being composted and used and given back to the earth for the organisms and the plants and things to use as energy and fuel. So it's something that I definitely see can link up this food chain, link up the ecosystem, and drive us forward into a more economic and sustainable way of life. And so that's why it was awesome to get Grilo on board. And I've tried the products; they're tasty. The powder, the protein, you wouldn't even know that it's crickets. Yet there's a massive hit of protein in there, and it's really awesome. Their bars taste really good. They're a little bit high carb for my liking, but at the same time, around training, like after rugby, I'd be happy to smash one of those back, get the blood glucose back up, or preempt it with a bit of a boost for those well made whole food sugars, and charge into a workout with a bit of extra protein. Of course, all our podcasts are brought to you by Waiketo, WAIKET 0.proveitnow.com, WAIKTO on Facebook. We have all the podcasts there. We have great articles from a lot of our contributors, and hopefully some future guests, if we can do things right. Be sure to share the podcast with your friends. Give us a rating on iTunes. That's how these podcasts sort of work. Ratings on iTunes means that it gets in front of more faces, gets suggested to more people. And thank you so much for all the word of mouth, all the feedback, and glad to be back. I hope you enjoyed this, and it'll be great to hear from you. Have an awesome week, and hopefully we can bring you another podcast next week as well. Loving being back. Cheers.